Once you've made your diagnostic and it's time to order parts, this tutorial will show you how to do that. The first thing you'll want to do is go to the Quick Parts tab. Then you'll want to click on Parts. Sometimes when you open the Quick Parts tab, if the vehicle has not been correctly entered into the system, you may have to build the vehicle manually. I would highly suggest that you input the full VIN on your estimate before you go into Quick Parts. If not, you can still enter it in at this time, but using the full VIN will provide you with the correct parts. The next thing you want to do is go to the category on which your part would most likely be found. On this particular vehicle, we're going to look for some belts just for demonstration purposes. You'll notice here there are two selections. You can do belts and cooling parts and belts and cooling labor. We're not going to be concerned about the labor at all, so we can just deselect this. And we're going to go over here to belts, and this is going to automatically go out and search all of the vendors that we have available for those parts. Once you have got the list of all the parts, you'll notice up here that you can select a particular supplier that you'd like to check with. So it normally defaults to Napa Auto Parts, but you can also check with O'Reilly, AutoZone, and any of those other distributors, depending on what prices they have and what availability they have in stock. Another tip on this is that once you select the part, you'll notice that some suppliers will have the parts and some don't. So it's a good idea to check multiple sources to make sure that your part is available. Even if one supplier may be out, there might be another one in town that has it. Once you find the part you want to add to your list, you can go ahead and simply check the box next to the part that you'd like to add. We're going to select 3 different parts here, and we're going to go up here and we have 3 different options. We can transfer and exit, add and return to quote, and add to quote. Using the add to quote button, we'll take the parts you selected and add them to a temporary quote that you can see, which will compare all the prices of the parts you've selected from multiple vendors. So you can add parts from Napa Auto Parts, from O'Reilly, from AutoZone, compare to see what the best deal is. Add and return to quote will allow you to add the parts and then view right after you've added those parts to the quote and what you have on that quote. By pressing transfer and exit, it will automatically transfer these parts right over to your estimate and go straight from this quote. So for example, if I press add to quote right now, it just added those parts to the quote. If we do add and return to quote, you notice that those parts that I selected are here on our quote list. From here, we can add these parts to our list by simply going post and return. If we'd like to take an item off of this list once we've selected them, you just simply click this edit parts and you can delete the parts that you do not want on your list, and you have to make sure you really want to do that. So here we're going to hit save and return, and we like what we see, so we're going to do is post and return. You'll notice now that those parts that I selected are now on our ticket. Once you have selected the parts, you're not quite done yet because you haven't necessarily ordered the parts from the vendor. What you'll have to do is select the parts and then click on the Quick Parts Ordering, and that will order the parts from your vendor. If you're not sure it happened, it's a good idea just to give them a call to make sure that they got your order. Once the vendor brings your part, you'll have to do a couple things to ensure that your part gets entered into the system correctly. First, let's say your belt gets here and the distributor brings it, they drop it off in the Austin or the Ag building, depending on where you're at. And you'll notice here what you'll have to do is you'll come down here, you'll verify that the part number is correct, the price is correct. You'll put in quantity received. This is very important, showing that we actually received the part. and then the invoice number that's on the invoice that you got with the part. So you put the invoice number in and make sure you got your quantity received. If there's a core on the part, you'll see that here, and then you push save. And that's what you need to do when you order a part. So as soon as the part gets here, you need to make sure that you come in here. The first thing you do when you get your part is to come in and show that you received the part, and again, put your invoice number in and save that, and then make sure that everything is appearing correctly on your estimate. Now, one thing to keep in mind, all of the shop fees and everything in the estimate is already pre-populated. So we are no longer going to be charging a labor rate at all. It will already be showing up here in our shop fee. And that shop fee will be $15 plus 10% of any parts and labor that are on the ticket. And so that shop fee is already calculated into the ticket. So you don't have to worry about ever adding labor to a repair. After you've recorded your invoice number and received the quantities of your part, you'll need to make sure that you take your ticket and make sure you have the correct invoice number written down, write your name on the invoice, and then take the invoice and put it into the files in the tool room above the computers. There's also one in the ag building next to the computers as well. That way the secretaries can get your invoice and make sure it's been submitted correctly.